All right. Well, welcome everybody to Sci-Fi Explained. This week is Total Recall. And as we were just talking about before I started the recording, there's the original Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger from 1990. And then there was a remake in 2012. And I didn't even know about the remake actually until earlier today. So I actually watched it. And it's a different plot line, not entirely, but definitely some different pieces to it. And they actually paid tribute to the original in several of the scenes, which was pretty cool, which you would never know about unless you watch the original. But they plug the original so many times. It's fantastic. And there's well, I'll get to this later. There's actually a scene. I'll just tell you now. There's a scene where the main character in the new Total Recall is reading a book, and I'm pretty sure it's actually a book by the author
Philip K. Dick
of the series that this was based off of, which is this guy right here, Philip K. Dick. I did not know his name, to be quite honest, before I started doing some research on this film. The book that he wrote that this film is based off of is We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. Provocative title, maybe not quite as catchy as Total Recall. But this is the same guy who brought us Blade Runner. It's the guy who brought us where's the other one that I had heard of? Minority Report, Scanner Darkly, as well as The Man in the High Castle.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this guy was a prolific author. He has over 60 full-length science fiction novels and over 100 short stories, science fiction short stories. So he wrote a lot, and several of his books have been turned into movies now. And he inspired, I think, many contemporary science fiction writers. He was alive beginning, born in 1928 through 1982. So he never saw any of his books being turned into movies, unfortunately. But his legacy lives on in the books, in the movies rather, from the books. So we're kind of continuing our Mars trilogy with this book. We're going to move on to some different stuff after this. So this will be our last look at the red planet. And they really made it red this time. They really overdid the color of the atmosphere, the color of the landscape, to jog people's memory of the red planet. But as we saw in our other Mars films, Mars is not quite that red. It's actually more like this, kind of this dingy orangish color. Oxidized iron though, and that's why we get that reddish hue from trace amounts of oxygen in the atmosphere, which probably may have been more abundant in the distant past, several billion years ago, and water as well. That's one of the things that goes into rust. So we think in the distant past, it was probably a much thicker atmosphere and abundant surface water on Mars. But we'll get to that too. The other thing I wanted to mention about this opening scene, we see them walking on the Martian surface, just as if they were walking on the surface of Earth, just like in The Martian, where the effects of a much smaller gravity is just not taken into account at all, as it was in John Carter. I thought they did a really nice, fun job with that with John Carter, but you seem to be able to walk on Mars exactly the same as you would walk on Earth, even though the gravity is, what did we say last time, just about 1/3 that of Earth's gravity. So they botched that in the opening scene, but they did that in The Martian as well. But anyways, the central plot is that there's this huge colony on Mars, which revolves around mining this element that they call terbidium. It is not a real element. They don't tell us a lot about it in the film. We get little bits and pieces through the news broadcasts that are on the TV in different scenes of the movie. So what we learn is that it's a rare resource, unknown on Earth, but common on Mars. It's a key ingredient in these particle beam weapons that the Northern Bloc's program of space weapons depends on. And so that's why they're mining this mineral on Mars. There's this huge mine called the Pyramid Mine, where apparently there's tons of this stuff, but something new and exciting has been discovered in the Pyramid Mine. And that's what the main character, Douglas Quaid, has stored inside his head, the secret of what's hidden under the surface of the Pyramid Mine. And his memory's been erased, so he doesn't even remember that he knows it. And the whole movie is about him recovering that memory, so he can figure out what the big secret is under the Pyramid Mine. So we're led to believe at the movie's end that the secret, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, is that there is abundant trapped atmosphere under the Martian surface. The aliens who lived on Mars 500,000 years ago knew about it, and they built this huge apparatus to release all of this atmosphere from beneath the surface into the now depleted Martian atmosphere to make it a habitable planet again. Spoiler alert, that atmosphere below the surface does not exist. There are some things that are pretty provocative that do exist, both on and below the Martian surface. We've talked about the huge geographical features, the biggest volcano in the solar system, the biggest canyon system. Although I don't think we really talked about all of the frozen water that we know about that's trapped on the surface in the Martian polar ice caps, both on the northern polar ice cap that you see here, into a smaller amount on the Martian southern pole, South Pole. But more recently, we think that there might actually be huge reservoirs of liquid water trapped below the surface on Mars. This was a discovery back in, it was 2017, 2015, by the European Space Agency. And I want to play a 2 or 3 minute film from the Space Agency because they do a really nice job at explaining the discovery and why it's led Mars enthusiasts, both professional scientists and layperson alike, to have greater hope that life might still exist on the Martian atmosphere, or excuse me, somewhere on below the surface on Mars. I believe it's this video right here. No, it's not it. Actually, maybe I have it saved in the next. I do. I've got it right here. So yeah, here's the European Space Agency discussing this recent discovery of these vast underground reservoirs of salty water on Mars.
First ice, and now
Salty.
water. Humans may be one step closer to finding life on Mars. Italian scientists say their radar indicates there's a huge lake of salty liquid on the red planet. They presented their findings at the headquarters of the Italian Space Agency.
Well, the final remarks are very simple. Water is there. We have not anymore any doubts. After many years of doubts, that we have to remove one after the other up to today.
The study was published in the journal Science, and though the authors do not know the depth of the pool, they estimate that it's around 20 kilometers wide and under 1.5 kilometers of ice, the location close to the planet's south pole. Researchers suspect there might be other hidden bodies of water, encouraging news for experts who believe water is the key to life on any planet.
This clearly is exciting because we know that water is almost everywhere in space, and we have a proof on our planet that where water is abundant, life can prosper. And if the life is very much connected to water, then we can hope that life is also almost everywhere in the universe.
The red planet has long been an object of fascination for space explorers. The European Space Agency's US counterpart, NASA, just launched a spacecraft that is scheduled to land in November for more exploits on our neighboring planet.
Since then, the search has continued for liquid water reservoirs on Mars. I don't believe a second one has been found to date, but it's probably only a matter of time. There are probably lots of them. And who knows? Maybe there is biological life existing in those salty reservoirs right now.
So salt.
Yeah, it's very salty. And
Sodium salt?
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the way we know that is just with the radar. It's we get a specific density of the water down there. And it's definitely not pure water. It's salty water. So I loved this scene because this is near the end, and the Martian atmosphere is released, and there are all these like huge windows that just break everywhere, and you see glass spraying out all over the place, all over all the people sitting there. And it doesn't actually touch a single one of them. Nobody gets a scrape on them. And if you remember from several years ago, there was a meteorite that landed in Russia. This rock was about 50 feet across, and it exploded in the atmosphere, but broke glass for like 100 square miles. And several hundred people received cuts from these broken windows from the shock wave. From that. And so, these people were like, right next to the glass in the movie, but nobody got cut. So, yeah, I just thought that was worth mentioning because so unbelievable, even maybe more so than a full atmosphere being trapped below the surface.
Yeah. It would have to be very strong glass too to withstand the difference of pressures in and out.
Yeah, so this huge pressure difference broke the glass by this new expanding atmosphere, but then it didn't cut anybody.
So I wonder how they do that in the movies.
Well, I mean, I think it's breakaway glass. I think there is a material that's used for these types of scenes that has a low probability of cutting people.
I think I've heard it to be a sugar glass.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I don't
think
know.
That's another name for it as well.
Yeah.
I just realized that I think we skipped a slide. I wanted to go back to that. Why didn't it come up?
And how quickly do you think that unleashing all of that gas and atmosphere from inside the pyramid would have equilibrated on the entire planet,
Yeah, I mean, so right. So you could do a physics calculation of how big the planet is and, how much gas is being released, moment to moment, and you could calculate how long it would take to fill the entire atmosphere. My guess is it would take days or weeks, maybe even months or years. And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, Arnold and his heroine, whose name I can't remember right now, would certainly have perished when they got sucked out, or not sucked out, but pushed out rather,
Yeah.
in the closing moments of the film. For some reason, one of the images that I wanted to show you seems to have either been deleted or I don't know why it's not there, but I'm going to insert it again because it's my favorite slide. I can't believe it disappeared. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to see what's going on. Oh, I must have accidentally covered it up with this one. Hang on 1 sec. You've got to see this this other slide because it's one of like the most ridiculous scenes in the movie. But the cool thing about it is that when I did a search for the topic that it covered on Google, these were the images that popped up from the movie.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so here is the explosive decompression scene. So we see this at the beginning of the film when Arnold gets sucked out, and then near the end again when he gets sucked out, as does the arch villain, who we're led to believe, even though he gets sucked out just seconds earlier, dies before the new atmosphere of Mars can reach him. Okay, so I was really interested in explosive decompression. So it turns out that it's real. So the difference between the pressure inside our bodies versus the vacuum of space, or in the Martian atmosphere, for example, which is 100 times thinner than the Earth's atmosphere, really does cause our bodies to undergo decompression. It's not explosive in the sense that is typically shown in a lot of films, including most recently in Ad Astra, where if you've seen that, maybe we should do Ad Astra at some point. There's this scene where the I can't remember if they're orangutans or some other form of great ape. They get depressurized and they explode in that depressurized chamber. That doesn't happen. That's just a TV trope. But decompression does happen. Turns out you can live for about 15 seconds in the vacuum of space before your body would start decompressing in a way that would be irreparable. After those 15 seconds, there's permanent damage, and you'd probably be dead in under a minute. Basically what happens is your blood starts to boil closest to your outer epidermal layers, outer skin layers. And there would be some bulging of skin and any other tissue on the surface of your body. So eyes probably would start bugging out like this. You would puff out dramatically, similar to how blobfish puff out dramatically when they're brought up to the surface. I should have brought up a picture of a blobfish to show you, but there are these incredibly slender, beautiful fish underneath the water in the depths. But when they get brought up to the surface, they depressurize and they just puff out like balloons.
Blob? Have you said?
Blobfish, B-L-O-B, yeah, blobfish. So anyway, what's that?
Stuart, do you remember you had decompression problems?
I remember.
Yeah, so when you go diving, you have to
Yeah.
return to the surface slowly to prevent the bends.
Yeah.
So it's a similar deal, but much more extreme when you go from a pressurized chamber in a spacecraft to the vacuum of space, or into a really thin atmosphere like on Mars. So it wouldn't be explosive. There would be decompression. You would puff out, your eyes would bug out, and it would eventually kill you within 15 seconds to a minute. So that's real. Arnold and the other heroine of the film probably would have died before the oxygen-rich atmosphere reached them. But hey, it's Hollywood.
Yeah, so these are two different issues. One is the oxygen content, and the other is the pressure, the atmospheric pressure.
So yeah, so the atmosphere on Mars right now, the very thin atmosphere, is mostly carbon dioxide. It's like 95% carbon dioxide. So it's unbreathable for people. So even if it was up to the right pressure, you still couldn't breathe it. But you wouldn't undergo decompression if you had a face mask on. If the Martian atmosphere were similar to Earth's, you could walk around just fine without undergoing any type of decompression. In Titan's atmosphere, that would be the case. The Titan atmosphere is quite a bit thicker than that of Earth's. And so you wouldn't need a spacesuit on Titan. Spacesuits are just for decompression. Face masks with oxygen is what we need for breathing. So you could just have a face mask on Titan with oxygen and be just fine. You'd be a little cold. I think it's negative a couple hundred degrees there. So yeah, so two different issues, you're right. Composition of the atmosphere and the pressure. Okay, so we talked about this turbinium mining. Somehow heating up this turbinium creates this chain reaction that leads to this oxygen-rich atmosphere being released into the planet's thin atmosphere. This is all science fiction. Turbinium doesn't exist. And there's no element on Mars that would release a non-existent atmosphere trapped underneath the surface. I did want to show you another video. There's a really nice Mars 101, and I thought because this is going to be the last Mars-based video we watch, it would just be fun to get some quick facts about Mars before we move on. So let me pull that up. This one is from National Geographic. Here we go.
Ooh.
Yeah, they start out really nice there.
To the ancient Romans, the planet Mars was symbolic of blood and war. But to many people today, the red planet may hold the key for a bright new future for humanity. The story of Mars began about 4.5 billion years ago when gas and dust swirled together to form the fourth planet from the Sun. Mars is the second smallest planet in the solar system, with a diameter just shy of the width of Africa. In fact, its entire surface area is similar to that of all of Earth's continents combined. Much like its terrestrial cousin, Mars is dense and has a rocky composition. At the center of the planet is a core made of iron, nickel, and sulfur, which may have created a protective magnetic field during Mars's earlier years. Enveloping the core is a rocky mantle made of silicate minerals and a crust rich in iron. These iron minerals react with the trace amounts of oxygen in Mars's atmosphere and rusts, giving the planet its signature reddish hue. While its blood-like appearance inspired the ancient Romans to name Mars after their god of war, the planet's rusty color could be considered symbolic of the planet's prime days long past. Today, Mars is dry, desolate, and cold, with temperatures dropping as low as negative 225 degrees Fahrenheit. But billions of years ago, the planet was much warmer, more geologically active, and had a watery surface. Lake beds and river valleys snake along the face of Mars, indicating that liquid water was, for a time, present. Volcanoes, such as Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system at 3 times the height of Mount Everest, once erupted lava. But by about 50 million years ago, soon after Earth's dinosaurs died out, Mars's volcanoes also went extinct. Water on the red planet still exists today, but mostly in the form of polar ice caps. Because of factors such as the presence of water, some scientists believe life may have existed on the red planet and may exist again. Since the 1960s, space programs from around the world have launched missions to Mars in attempts to understand the planet's past, present, and potential for sustaining life. Life on another planet may well be out of reach for the near future. But if any planet could give us hope, Mars may hold the key to the survival of humanity.
Okay. So, so moving away for a moment from the science of astronomy into a bit of psychology, I thought it would be interesting to talk about the premise that we get to near the end of the movie, and in fact, really in the last scene of the movie, not this one shown here, but the last scene in the original film where Arnold and the heroine Miranda, Miranda, can't remember her name
Melina?
right now. What is it?
Right. I'm throwing out Melina, but I'm not sure.
Melina, something like that. Anyways, they're standing there on the cliff looking out over the Martian landscape, and Douglas Quaid says, I just had the terrible idea that maybe this is all just a dream. And then the movie ends. And we're left wondering whether or not it was a dream. Perhaps he's still back at recall with this memory of being a secret agent that they really did implant. And the whole movie was part of that implanted memory that he had. We don't really know whether he actually got out of the chair at recall with the realization that his memory had been erased or not. The ending scene is a little ambiguous, but I love this scene earlier on where he's offered the red magic pill to wake up back into his old reality. And I did a little digging on whether any movies have been inspired by this, and there are claims that both The Matrix and Inception sought inspiration from Total Recall. There's that scene in The Matrix where Neo is offered the blue pill and the red pill, and he gets to choose which one he wants, either to wake up back in the Matrix or to wake up outside the Matrix. And so, and then in the movie Inception, there are these layered dream states over and over again that characters keep moving in and out of. And so we don't really know at the end of the film whether the whole thing has been a dream or whether what we've actually seen is happening objectively outside the heroine's mind or not. So we're left to wonder a little bit. And the second movie is a little bit different.
Outside the hero's mind.
Outside the hero's mind. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Outside the hero's mind, not the heroine's mind. Yeah, outside the hero's mind, outside of Douglas Quaid's mind. In the more recent film, 2012, a similar thing happens at the end, but it's a little bit less ambiguous. At the end, he doesn't talk about a dream state. There's just a scene that kind of pans out and goes to a big advertisement for recall. And he just has this inquisitive look on his face about, whether he's actually still in recall or not. In the movie.
Who is the star in the 2012 one?
Oh, I
Somebody-
can't remember
Colin
his
Fe-
name. Heather, do you remember his name?
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Colin
Yeah,
Farrell.
Colin Farrell. Thank you. Yeah, it's good. I watched it this afternoon. There are a few things that I wanted to mention, some of which I already did about the plugs they kept making for the original movie. So the scene where he walks through the security gates in the new film, just as Arnold walked through the Martian security gates at the airport or spaceport. So there's a woman that walks through in front of the hero in the new film, and she says she's going to be there in 2 weeks, but she's not the actual person in disguise in the 2012 movie. They just do that plug. She looks the same as the woman who Arnold Schwarzenegger was disguised as in the original film. So that was kind of cool. There are similar scenes in the moving elevators where arms get ripped off, just like in the original film. This time it's arms of cybernetic police officers as opposed to real people. Let's see, there were a couple other really good plugs to the original film. In the original film, there's that mutant who Kato, who shares or removes the secrets from Quaid's head. In the new film, it's just a human, but he has the same type of like quasi mystical feel that the mutant had in the original. And there were several other small little plugs that were a lot of fun. Oh, there's the great bar scene with the three-breasted woman. They threw that in there. Couldn't resist that one, apparently.
There's a Hindu goddess that has 3 breasts.
Yeah, what's her name? I can't remember at the moment. I've come across her before, though. Anyways, we can get back to that.
So just getting back to this scene for a second. I mean, Quaid seems to decide that not a dream when sweat was on that guy's brow. But when you think about it, that could be part of a dream too. I mean, that's
absolutely, yeah. There's no reason why you can't sweat in your dreams.
Right. So the fact that that was what he used for decision making and killed those guys, is kind of stretching things there.
Yeah, it's totally suspect. So in the 2012, it's not a drop of sweat; it's a tear. Not in the person who's trying to convince him, but in the heroine's eyes, who he's standing next to, as opposed.
Why couldn't that be in the dream as well? What is the?
It absolutely could be. Yeah, and I think it's just as ambiguous as everything else. We don't really know whether he's still back at Recall or whether he's actually on Mars living out this subjective reality, or whether it's all in his mind. Yeah. And so that's kind of the idea that gets played with.
The goddess
Matrix.
is.
Oh, go ahead.
The goddess is. It's Meenakshi, which is one of the incarnations of Parvati, and the temple and the statue that's famous of her is in the south, in the city of Madurai, big temple.
Cool.
In Tamil Nadu.
And I have no idea whether that was the inspiration for the three-breasted woman in either of these movies.
Or just some man's fantasy.
Yeah, or just some man's fantasy. However, I can tell you that this movie did inspire another sci-fi film in that way. The film Paul. I don't know if you've ever seen that. One of the heroes in that film is a comic book illustrator. And he also draws a woman with 3 breasts. Actually, maybe it's 4 breasts. I can't remember, but multiple breasts in that movie as well. So yeah, maybe this movie was one of the inspirations for that as well. There's another movie 5 years before this one that also plays with the same type of objective, subjective dream state. The movie Brazil. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but that's a great one.
Yeah, long time
Psychological,
ago.
yeah, drama. It doesn't really have anything to do with astronomy.
It's a
but,
Terry Gilliam film, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
really good film. So the 2012 film doesn't take place on Mars at all. It all takes place on a futuristic Earth, where chemical warfare has destroyed much of the habitability of the planet, except for 2 areas. And interestingly enough, those 2 areas are Great Britain and Australia. And I think the Great Britain in the film actually is not just the Isle, but it includes part of France as well. I think it's called like the New Federation or Great Federation of Great Britain or something like that. Anyway, so they are the dominant kind of ruling class, and everybody who lives on Australia, they are the working class citizens. So similar to the way that the political dynamic is described in the first movie, whereas the mine workers were subjected to harsh conditions. The workers from what's called the colony in Australia are subjected to in the 2012 version. However, the really fantastic thing that they decided to do to build the plot around in the 2012 version is that there is a tunnel between Australia and Great Britain that goes through the center of the Earth, which is called the Fall. And that's how the Fall, F-A-L-L, that's how they bring workers from the colony to work in New Great Britain, or the Federation of Great Britain, or whatever it's called. And those workers are they're exploited. And so, of course, the Fall was built by the Federation of Great Britain, so they could more easily exploit the workers down in the colony. But what's happening is that space is running out in the Federation of Great Britain, and they've devised a plan to eliminate all of the citizens of the colony. And so that's the mission of the hero in the 2012 version. He has to stop the cybernetic police force or cybernetic military force from destroying all of the population of Australia. But I thought it was fascinating how they portray the this basically huge tunnel from Australia to Great Britain. So there are a couple of scenes I want to show you about that. And
before you leave,
yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
This scene here. So, what happens? Takes the red pill, supposedly. Here.
So what's supposed to happen if he takes the red pill? It's going to allow them to fix what they're calling a I can't remember what it's called. Some kind of cognitive ailment that he's suffering from.
Yeah, some kind of psychosis, actually.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what they call it in the film, but the red pill is supposed to wake him up from that. And we never really find out if it's actually going to do that or not, because he shoots the doctor in the head before he takes the red pill. Or actually, I guess he puts the red pill in his mouth, then notices the gleam of sweat coming down his face, and then shoots him and spits out the pill. So it's supposed to, yeah. Go ahead.
It has a word like schizophrenia.
Yeah, something schizophrenia.
Something, yeah.
Yes,
yeah, some kind of psychosis.
Yeah, something like that.
So you would think, based on that, the red pill gets him back to the reality that he was in before.
Right. That's the idea.
Which before?
So you would think that the red pill would do the same thing in the Matrix.
That's right. Yeah, brings him back into the Matrix. So he never even knows that he left or has the potential to leave. Erases this memory.
Right. Okay. Well, it turns out that the red pill does the opposite in the Matrix.
What do you mean? There's a red pill and what?
The red
blue or
pill
green?
represents an uncertain future, would free him from the control of the enslaving machine-generated dream world.
And it's the blue pill that that sends him back into the Matrix?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it says here, but
Oh.
yeah, the red pill.
Oh,
The red
okay.
pill. He joins the rebellion.
Oh, interesting. So they switched it from Total Recall.
Yeah, you take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Oh, nice.
Red pill and joins the rebellion.
Cool. I like it. I like it. So yeah, let me show you a couple scenes from the new movie because they are pretty cool, and they do have to do with physics. The first one I actually want to show you is the scene where they're in this car chase with flying cars, of course, and he turns off the motors of the flying car for a moment, but then turns them back on, and the shock wave that ensues is pretty cool. Let's see if I can get it to the right spot here.
While you're doing that, I wonder if Stuart has some thoughts about reality and dream states and cognitive, different cognitive levels or states or something like that.
You know, I don't really. And, you know, I was thinking of that movie Inception that Samuel talked about. I didn't understand that. And that had, you know, I kept saying I wanted to go back and look at it. And then I didn't think it was that good because it was so complex and too hard to understand, but it's gotten these great reviews. So it's probably worth going back and see if I can figure out the layering of these states. But in terms of,
I remember I had the same feeling that I wanted to see it again, but it seems too complex to challenge myself. But I would do it if Sam wants to do it.
Yeah, we could do Inception at some point. There's definitely some physics involved, some cool stuff with gravity. So anyways,
anyway,
with the end of Inception, the same thing happens actually. The last scene, we're not led to believe that everything we've just seen actually happened or not. There's some ambiguity to it, just like at the end of Total Recall. So I'm gonna switch my screen share over to the other film, and I'm gonna show you a couple scenes here that are pretty provocative. So the first one is the scene with the flying car. We're cutting into the middle of it where the shock wave happens when they get the engines back on, having turned them off. Pretty cool, right? I love how they didn't just like smash a car into another car. They had the shock wave in the engines actually do the crashing for them. I really like that. And so the other thing that is really pertinent actually to the plot line of the 2012 film is what they call the fall, this tunnel that goes through the earth. And they mess with gravity as this thing is going through the center of the earth. The way they describe gravity working in the film is totally bogus. We'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to show you this scene of how central it is to how everything unfolds near the end. But the way they've got gravity being depicted here is just, it's utter nonsense, which we will talk about in just a minute. But I want to show you how it all works here in the film, because it's an important little tidbit. We're almost there. Let's see here.
What do they do with the Earth's core while they're going through the Earth?
Exactly, yeah, so that's what we're gonna check out here. I think this is the right spot. Here we go. It's gonna be a few seconds before the weird parts of gravity happen, but you'll get the idea.
Prisoner in base 6 was just caught attempting escape. She was with a second individual, male.
That's him.
Deal with it.
Come on.
And the bag. Do it!
So they're in the fall right now, heading down towards the center of the Earth. Okay, totally ridiculous. Gravity does not just suddenly end when you get into the center of the Earth.
Oh. Is this about the elevator that goes through the fall?
What's that?
This is like an elevator that goes through the fall with suspension of gravity?
Yeah, they're going through the center of the Earth.
Yeah.
Entering core.
Now they're in the core of the Earth. Those are all the cybernetic police force there.
It's okay. They're in stasis.
Okay.
Attention, emergency hatch cannot deploy.
What are you doing?
while in zero gravity.
Hauser, these doors don't open for a reason.
We wait till past the core. Then we go.
Gravity reversing.
Okay, so this nonsense about getting into the core of the Earth where there not being any gravity and then gravity reversing,
Sort of the opposite.
yeah, it is totally ridiculous. Let me see if I can find the scene in the very beginning of the film that it deals with the similar concept, but it shows it a bit more elegantly as they are nearing the core. So there's the book right there. And I was trying to get a good look at the cover. I couldn't quite do it, but I'm pretty sure he's actually reading a book by the author of these science fiction books that this movie is based off of. All right, I missed the scene where they, okay, so here, it's right in here. All right, so we'll just watch this scene as they descend into the core of the Earth. Gravity does the same weird thing and then supposedly reverses. Check it out here.
Be stopping all humanitarian aid to the colony in light of this morning's bombing.
As much as I want to focus our efforts on cleaning up the colony, today's terrorist attacks means that funding will have to go to bolstering our synthetic federal police force. The protection of our citizens will always come first.
Approaching core. Please prepare for gravity reversal.
Same nonsense, zero gravity in the core. You don't actually get to see where they come out the other side, and gravity's just fine again. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the other screen, and I want to show you a couple little great videos that really do describe what would actually happen if you were able to fall through the earth in some kind of a protected way. You know, notwithstanding the center of the earth, the core being several thousand degrees. Somehow you have to get around that hurdle. But let's watch these two little films here to talk about just how long it would take and then what would actually happen in terms of speed and gravity.
Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. You know what would be really cool? If we had a hole that traveled straight through the Earth from pole to pole. I mean, you can go from seeing Santa to seeing some penguins in Antarctica in no time at all. But anyway, you might be wondering, how long would a trip like that actually take? Well, let's start off with some simplifications. Firstly, we're going to assume that the Earth has the same density everywhere, is a perfectly symmetric sphere, and the hole has no air in it, because otherwise the air resistance will cause you to reach terminal velocity, meaning your speed will eventually plateau. So with those assumptions out of the way, we're ready to begin. Let's suppose you're standing next to this super dangerous hole and fall in. And like you'd normally experience if you fell into any hole, you're going to accelerate down. But how much you accelerate depends on how far you are in the hole. See, when you're at the top of the hole, the entire Earth is below you, so you'll experience the same gravitational acceleration as you normally would, 9.8 meters per second squared, and you'll start to speed up as you fall. But then things change. Now you are inside the hole, so some of the Earth is above you and some of it is below you. And this means that the gravitational forces are both pulling you up as well as pulling you down. So your acceleration is going to change. Luckily for us, there's a simple trick that we can make use of to figure out how much. Let's pretend you are inside a spherical shell with a uniform density. In here, no matter where you are, the gravitational forces from every part of that shell will cancel out. To actually prove this, you need to know a super cool thing called calculus and add up the forces from every single tiny portion of the shell. But to keep this video from getting too math heavy, just trust me that it works. Now, as you are falling towards the center, the parts further from the center than you are form a spherical shell. And we just said that all of the gravitational forces from that shell will cancel out. So this means that we can simply pretend that that part of the Earth isn't there. And instead, you are standing on the surface of a smaller Earth. So as you fall, the Earth basically gets smaller and smaller, and your downward acceleration decreases. And once you reach the center, you won't experience any acceleration at all. But remember, you are still falling down pretty quickly, so you'll zoom right past the center towards the other side. And from there, instead of the Earth shrinking, it's getting larger and larger as you fall down, since you are now moving away from the Earth's center. And with all that Earth above you, the acceleration will flip directions and now will be pointing up. But since you are still traveling down, this means your velocity will start to slow, eventually reaching zero when you get to the other side of the hole. And if you don't jump out, you'll fall right back in and oscillate back and forth in the hole forever. I don't know about you, but I definitely have better things to do with my time, like make these amazing videos. But assuming you only travel through the hole once, using some physics, we'll find that this whole trip will take you around 42 minutes. Not too shabby. So what do you think the coolest way to travel across the world is? Let me know in the comment section below. If you are into following everything Life Noggin does, then you should definitely check out Life Noggin.
All right. So 42 minutes. Go ahead, Deb.
In the beginning, he said, because there's no air, there's no terminal velocity.
If there's no air, there would almost certainly be air, unless it's a sealed chamber, which it's not in this movie either. And so, yeah, the time would definitely change if there was air in there, because there'd be air resistance. So it would slow down your velocity and increase the time it would take to get through.
So terminal velocity is a function of the density of the air, atmosphere, the friction of it.
Yeah, just the effect of falling through an atmosphere at all.
Yeah, I guess
if you're not falling through space, the vacuum of space, there's air resistance.
Right. I just hadn't put those two things together as such.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So let me show you the other one now. If I can get out of this. There we go. Okay. So this next video is going to tell you a little bit more about the physics of falling through the Earth.
Imagine if you could build a tunnel that sliced through the center of the Earth. Suddenly you could travel to opposite ends of our planet with ease. Simply hop into the tunnel and let gravity whisk you towards your destination. Initially, gravity's pull would accelerate you down toward the Earth's center. But as you passed through the core, gravity would start to work against you. Here's how long it would take you to reach the other side. First, you must create a vacuum by removing all air out of the tunnel. Otherwise, friction in the form of air resistance will slow you down too much, and air pressure near the center would crush you to death. Next, you'll need to wear a spacesuit, which will protect you against the intense heat at the core and supply you oxygen to breathe. After removing the air and suiting up, you could free fall through the vacuum tunnel. Assuming the force of gravity is constant throughout your trip, it would take about 19 minutes for you to reach Earth's center. You would be blazing along at 25,000 miles per hour, or 32 times the speed of sound. But you would feel completely weightless, just like an astronaut in space. As you passed through the core, your speed would slow down, but your momentum would continue to propel you upward against gravity. By the time you reached the other end, you would be back to a walking pace. In total, the trip would take about 38 minutes. That certainly beats a 40-hour plane ride from Santiago, Chile to Xi'an, China.
Okay, so the key point in this film, they kind of glossed over it in the other film, is that you're in free fall. So you're weightless from the moment that you jump into the tunnel. So in the movie, they show gravity working like at the surface as this thing is plummeting in towards the center of the Earth. And then suddenly when they reach the core, all of a sudden gravity is zero. That's the part that's just complete nonsense. They would experience free fall all the way through. The force of gravity they would feel would change throughout the entire trip, depending on whether they were falling down towards the center or coming back out the other end. But there's no like instantaneous switch. It's very, very gradual. So nobody would be slamming into walls or anything like that as portrayed in the 2012 film. So it doesn't work for the plot line, but works for Hollywood.
YouTube is fantastic. It has everything.
It does, right?
It does.
You can find the answers to almost anything. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
That was very good. Getting back to the issue of the vacuum.
Yeah.
You know, when Elon Musk was talking about this thing called the Hyperloop, it would go from San Francisco to LA, you know, basically a tube underground. And I think he even talked about it from Boston to Washington. But it's the same concept, that whole tube was going to be a vacuum, so that, you know, you didn't have air resistance.
Yeah, if you can create a vacuum, traveling distances becomes way more efficient.
Yeah, and obviously when Musk talks about something, they're pretty close to we could do it. So I mean, I guess that was very expensive, and there was a lot of buying the land and everything else. But
right,
it's close to something that could have happened.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is actually creating a vacuum chamber that big. Right now, the biggest vacuum chamber that exists is for LIGO. Um, uh, The moment I'm forgetting what the abbreviation stands for, but it's
That's for the gravitational waves?
It's the gravitational
Yes.
wave detector. I can't remember exactly what LIGO stands for. But yeah, it's the gravitational wave detector. And the arms, I think, are over 1 kilometer long. And that's the biggest vacuum chamber that's ever been created. And it's surprisingly good. But, you know, they're not moving trains or buses of people through the vacuum chamber. They're just moving a laser. So I think the tunnel's only 6 feet across or something like that. And it's above ground, not below ground. It's just a steel tunnel. So yeah, you could certainly do something like that underground. I think the hardest part is actually making the vacuum. You figure out how to sustain a vacuum for that distance. What is San Francisco to LA? It's got to be what, several hundred miles, right?
Yeah, 300, 400 miles.
Yeah. So how you make a vacuum chamber that big, I don't know. But maybe you just scale up something like LIGO. Could be as easy as that. I'm honestly not sure. Well, what questions, comments, considerations that all of you have for Total Recall?
I don't remember how, or maybe it wasn't made a big deal, the transportation from Earth to Mars.
Yeah, you don't see it at all.
Yeah. It was just, I'm taking the transport, and that was the end of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and they, you know, whether it was deemed to be 8 months or 8 weeks or 8 minutes, nobody knows.
Yeah, you don't know how much time elapsed there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you how dumb I am. I think I saw the second one in like 2014, 2015.
Oh, yeah?
And I don't think I put them together that it was connected. I think I said to myself, there's a lot of movies that have the name Total Recall, isn't there? But I don't think I put together they were connected.
Well, Stuart, I didn't even know it existed until a few hours ago, so you're a step ahead of me.
I don't know if I am, but since I saw it.
Watching on Amazon, you know, they have a bit about the actors and about trivia.
Oh, yeah.
And so in one of the trivia comments, it said that the original play for the first one was changed when Schwarzenegger came on board to suit his macho action, punch him out kind of persona. But the original screenplay, and I have not read the book or seen the second movie, but the original screenplay for that movie involved a lot of dark humor and not so much bang it up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I wondered if the second movie had the dark humor aspects, but
no, it didn't. You know, I think it portrays just as dismal a view of the future in terms of, you know, political exploitation of working class populations.
Yeah.
And kind of the dismal view on the future of the habitability of Earth.
Yeah. Just read today's paper every day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're both pretty dark in that way.
Yeah,
but no more so than Ad Astra was, actually. I thought Ad Astra was incredibly dark in the way it portrayed the future of humanity.
Yeah.
So we should add Ad Astra to the list. There's some pretty cool astronomy scenes in there that are worth talking about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
so I think one of the failings of this movie, you brought it to mind when you made that comment that it was changed a little bit when Schwarzenegger came on with his penchant for violence. I mean, it seemed like they had way too much that was needed in that 1990 movie, and some of it was ridiculous. I mean, the act even 30 years ago. I mean,
I agree.
But very amateurish.
I feel like they could have had the makings of a pretty excellent psychological thriller had they left out all the violence.
Right.
And the same thing with the 2012 version. I don't think there was any need for most of the violence that they portrayed in the movie. And I think without it, it would have been much more like Inception. There was a little violence in Inception, but not much. The focus was on the psychology of the film. And I think if Total Recall would have done that, it probably would have turned out to be much more of a cult classic and less of a well-made, but nonetheless, ultra-violent macho movie.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole business of what's real is much more intriguing than.
Yeah, I think so. Although we may be the minority in our opinions about that. I think violence sells pretty well on movies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the psychological aspect of it. They did throw in some new twists to that in the 2012, especially at the end. And I won't tell you about that because it's worth watching it to get those little tidbits at the end. It's pretty cool. I really like the way they redid the ending. And so that's worth watching. If nothing else, just for the 2 or 3 plot twists that they added in. The other big difference between the 2012 version and the original version is that there's a ton of CGI in the 2012 version. They wanted to do that in the 1990 version, but computer graphics just weren't good enough at the time. And so most of what you see in the 1990 version is all done with mechanical apparatuses that were built and real cosmetic prosthetic stuff. As in compared to the 2012 version where it's mostly CGI.
Yeah. So what do you have in mind for the future?
For the next films?
Movie-wise.
Yeah. What do I have on the agenda? Hang on one sec. Let me get out of this.
Imagine if you could build a tunnel.
And let me pull up the... let me just make sure I did everything on the slideshow that I wanted to show you first.
Yeah.
I think I did. All right, we're on it right there. Yeah, I think that's the last slide. Yeah. And that's everything there. So yeah, another hand to Philip K. Dick for writing such incredible science fiction that's, I think, really paved the way for a lot of modern day science fiction writers and films.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see. Up next, what do we have
tonight?
Just pull up the agenda here. I made a list of the next several movies that I wanted to do. And one moment here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to click on. Sorry.
When is?
Let's see here.
Okay, so today's Sufi.
Where
so
is
today on
that list?
13.
Sci-fi Explained. Okay, Sci-Fi Explained movie list. Should be opening now. All right, here it comes.
We did, yeah.
So the next one is Sunshine.
Which
it's
Sunshine?
a cool solar astronomy thriller. The latest one.
There's a
And then-
Sunshine that's about the Holocaust.
Oh no, not that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Galaxy Quest, one of my favorite comedy sci-fi movies.
It's the one with Alan Rickman.
Yeah. And then a couple sci-fi
Oh, Star
Trek films.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the new Star Treks, which I think is excellent, gets us back actually into the ideas of time travel, black holes and wormholes. And then we continue with kind of a time bending theme with Star Trek First Contact. And then, yeah, maybe we'll add, we talked about Ad Astra.
And Inception.
And Inception.
Yeah.
I think that'll be fun.
So, give me some specifics about this Sunshine so I can find it.
Oh yeah, let me, I'll just bring it up for you.
Okay. Give me a visual.
Yeah.
Sci-Fi Channel, wouldn't that be some?
We can even
Sunshine.
watch, here's what the movie looks like right here. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, we could even watch the trailer if you want.
2007?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see if we can watch the trailer. For some reason my Zoom window keeps moving around. I'm not sure why that's happening.
Is there more than one Sunshine?
Well, there's a Sunshine that is about the Holocaust with Ray Fiennes and Rachel Weisz.
Here's the one we're gonna watch.
Our sun is dying. Mankind faces extinction. 16 months ago, I, Robert Capa, and a crew of 7 left Earth frozen in a solar winter. Our mission, reignite the sun before it's too late. Welcome to Icarus 2.
Strange, but this Danny Boy.
So if you wake up one morning and it's a particularly beautiful day, you'll know we made it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys again for joining me for Sci-Fi Explained. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Heather, do you have any comments?
You know, I didn't see this one.
before today, so I don't, unfortunately.
Go watch it. It's worth watching.
Yeah.
Well,
And you got two to watch. You got to watch the original and the 2012.
right.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
I'm gonna watch the 2012 one.
Yeah, me too.
It's worth it.
Me too. Yeah.
All right. You guys have a great
So
night.
when are we going to do this next one?
Yeah, I think 2 weeks from today.
So today's the 22nd, so that's the 5th.
I believe that's correct.
6th,
Yep, the
sci-fi,
5th, yeah.
sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might not be there. That's Adrian's 21st birthday, so
Oh, yes,
cool.
it is.
yeah. So I might, but we'll see what.
Should we
Might
do
not
two-
wanna be-
should we
She
do
might not
Tuesday
want to be
instead?
with her parents. So.
But do we do it another night, Stuart, instead?
Yeah, we could do Tuesday.
How about 3 weeks for the 12th?
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll do it. We'll do it 3 weeks. The next one will be on. Let's make it the 12th.
Yeah, that'd be
The
great.
12th, which is the night of the Perseids.
It's true, but we'll be done long before it gets dark.
Right, right.
Great, let's do it.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
6 o'clock.
See you guys in 3 weeks.
All right. Sounds
Sci-fi.
good. Have a good night.
Toodaloo.
Bye.
You guys.
Bye. Bye.